So we welcome you to New Mexico. And I feel that we must have a very, very strong bond if it has brought you here because you love the Indian art form, the formless, the amorphous energy that comes and surrounds New Mexico. We call it the land of enchantment. And that enchantment is very profound because simply to view from a physical plane, from our physical eyes, this land, you have to begin to scale your vision in so that you see the subtleties of the shadows. Because on the surface, it's all the same. It's a few trees and some rocks and some sand and a little mound of a mountain. But as that bright, bright, never-ending sky moves above, there are those shadows that cause an ever-play, a pulsation that goes on in this land. And that pulsation and the capacity to perceive it allows you to move into that octave of enchantment, to spin through that energy into all the dimensions which are ever present, ever available in this place. And we are enchanting beings, and we are multidimensional beings who come here because of the whispering of our own memories. It's not some abstract idea in your mind. It's not some love of form that's really brought you here, but it is a palpation of energy which has created the forms here that awakens people. And I call this the land of entrapment, because once you have come and moved with that spin point and expanded your perceptions, it ingrains itself in you. It becomes a part of your pulsation. And that's why New Mexico is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because everyone is coming to find out something about themselves, because nothing that we see outside ourselves is separate from us. And so when you're palpating New Mexico, you're palpating your own frame of reference, your own repertoire of something that you know, of something that the heart remembers, of something that you're wanting to come into contact with, that's real, that may not have a name, that may not be able to be placed on a paper from left to right, but can be grasped, can be tried on, can be breathed in. And that brings us to touch the creative force within each of us. When we move into that spin point, we move into that creative energy, that pulsating energy that's a part of our life force. And that creative energy is the most profound reality there is. It is the only reality that counts at all. Because that creative energy, that life force, is that which takes us across the bridge to the unmanifest. And across that bridge to the unmanifest are all the dimensions that we remember, are all the experiences that our multidimensional selves remember and are looking for and are searching to reach back to on that other side of form. So when you come into a place within yourself that allows you to tap that creative force, you automatically move back across the bridge, back before this body, outside of time and space, and pull through that which supports you, that which allows you to bring forth some manifestation that we then use the eye and say, yes, I have painted that, or that speaks to me. And everything that we paint or sculpt or palpate or weave or whatever it is we do is our own self, is our own selves. And this is a very profound time on this planet to begin to see that self, to search for that self and bring it into an octave of life that has meaning, that can speak, that can weave between us, so that though our positionalities may be different, our cultures may be different, our training may be different, we can palpate that commonality that we have so that we know that we are one being. We are one being with each other. We are one being with these plants, with this earth, with this sky. So that creative force is the bridge that comes from the unmanifest into manifestation through us and creates the quality of our life, creates the meaning of our lives. And you feel it. It has form, it has weight, it has measure. You can feel it in the air right now. What I'm palpating in the air around us right now is the prana. It's a little that's going on in this room because all of you have automatically tapped into that place. And so we're all in a meshwork, in a medium together. We are all flowing in the same medium right now. And what we want to do is to learn how to take that medium and bring it forth so that we can recognize it outside ourselves in the highest octave. Because that's why we each and every one come at this time into body. Come forth from the unmanifest through that spin point into matter. And so our vehicles are the vehicles of that creativity. And the quality of our consciousness, the quality of our vehicle is what determines what we sculpt, what we create out there. And so there's an interplay. There's a dance that goes on between that which is outside us and that which we are. So the channel for creation, which is us, the vehicle for creation, which is us, needs to be of the highest octave. Enter the emotional body, an aspect of ourself, which is the aspect that we most identify. It's when we have those feelings that we sometimes create. Often those feelings of creation come from sorrow, come from sadness, come from the wrenching of our experience in physical form. And when we put that outside of ourselves, there is a releasing that takes place within ourselves. But the entire medium outside us is then impacted, imprinted with that vibration. So that the emotions that we are experiencing affect the colors that we choose or the shape that we design. And that color and that shape echoes out to everyone there who may not speak of an understanding of it, but can feel that energy and then is taken up by it and moved on by it. And so if our emotional bodies then are impregnated with fear, with dissolution, with anger, with those things in which we are so embroiled in these vehicles, in these relationships, in this physical form, that it limits us, then it blocks us from moving back and forth across that bridge in the octaves that we need. And so we become hungry and we don't have that life force energy that can take us through time and space. So we have to move the emotional body up into octaves of rapture, up into octaves of ecstasy, so that we can draw the divine, so that we can draw that energy through us and create something totally different outside us, so that the mirror outside us represents that. When we have that moment, and I know you all know that delicious moment, when we perceive that ecstasy, when we are in tune on a universal level, and we have lifted ourselves up from our personal karma onto a universal flow, we then pull in that octave. But again, we're limited so often by this emotional body that in fact can only be changed because it's not in time and space. It does not know our heart's desire. It only knows its own repertoire. It does not know of those higher frequencies. It only knows what it has experienced over and over again. From my perspective, that experience goes on lifetime after lifetime after lifetime and is imprinted in the molecular structure of our physical vehicles, in the structure of our emotional bodies. in the octave of our communication, where we choose whether our communication is riddled with judgment, separation, self-righteousness, or whether it's able to come up into this frequency, into this higher octave, and utilize that unending flow. It's very important to understand that we have these emotional bodies and that they are entities. They are as profound and constructed, completely constructed, as our physical vehicle. When we begin to understand that, we can begin to clear those little nebulas of imprint that we have, of limitation, that say, I cannot be a great artist. I cannot create this form. I cannot speak my heart. We cannot function from universal octaves until this and here is cleared. We use our creativity in that way so often, by allowing the creativity to push on that emotional body that determines, as I said, the colors that you use, the form that you choose, that then radiates and pulsates out the story, your repertoire of what you've experienced. And so we have to begin to look at that as something that we can touch, that we can make contact with, that we can understand. I know that all of you understand the essence of colors, because color speaks of frequency. It speaks of that life energy, and it tells the tale of where we are, where we live. And so when we want to move up our octave into a higher frequency, we have to use color. We have to use light. That's why color, because it is the essence of light. To bring that light into our consciousness, we have a master gland in the head. It's called the pineal gland. And that pineal gland has cells of the retina of the eye that perceives, that sees. And we have to begin to find that place in us that sees from up here, that sees without the positionality or the negativity of the wrenching of our emotional bodies, but that sees with the scope, with the universal scope of who we actually are. Because what are you doing if your desire is to create, but looking for who you are, since everything that you create is you? And everything that you create is that which you offer to the world. And so I'm saying to you that we're coming to a time on this planet where what you offer to the world is very profound and truly, truly matters. That each individual being who has chosen to be in form at this time, to open the consciousness to a level of being able to break through the dimensions, to recognize the realities that are all around us here, and palpate and utilize those realities in order to change the frequency of this dimension. Because if we don't, it'll all be removed as it has been before. And from my perspective, it is that knowing that causes us to be born at this time and to be searching for that thing, for that something that we don't know its name inside, that we can contact, that gives meaning to our lives. We have searched in every corner, in every way. We have searched in relationship. We have searched through the mirror of how can I live by reflecting you. We've searched in every way. And now we have only to go back inside, back across that bridge into that unformed energy to find out who we actually are. We are so addicted to our bodies. We are so addicted to the positionality of who we think we are, because our emotional body simply continues its imprint of whatever its imprint is, lifetime after lifetime. And so we have to go back into the formless now, to raise the frequency, to find out out who we are. And when we begin to do that, something very surprising begins to happen. Because we begin to expand, the consciousness begins to expand. And it takes in realities that have been shut off from us. So that at this time we can begin to manifest as never before on this planet have we manifested. A few greats. And all of us say, that one outside myself. But it is our turn now. It is our turn now to be that great being, to be that whole being that can manifest energy. Because that's what creativity is. It's pure energy. It's pure energy. But our emotional bodies are so filled with the imprints of impurity, with the imprints of judgment, of guilt, that we have some faint memory of that purity, but we never contact it. We're still playing out the tragedies of when we were 2 or 4, or some other lifetime, or some other scenario. Now, those scenarios can be very useful to us, because when we touch, when we experience our multidimensionality, we begin to lose our positionality, and we begin to be able to find reality in that perception that we've had. So if you go into an octave, into a dimension where you are seeing colors but no shapes, you can, with your consciousness, pull that energy in through your vehicle and bring it out in a way that radiates out, that radiates out. Every time we look at ourselves outside of the limitation of who we think we are right now, we begin to expand the possibilities of our creativity, simply because our repertoire expands. If you want to paint beautifully, move inside and look for your frame of reference of the painter in you, because you have one. Just as a child is never afraid of the unknown, we never do something that's separate or different from our repertoire in a way that's very mind-boggling. But it's very true. If you have the urge to create, if you have the urge to paint, it's because you have a frame of reference for that. And by painting, you're looking for something. Initially, you're looking for your emotional body. You are painting those feelings that you have out there. But as you paint, and the painting begins to release the energy that's locked up inside you, you begin to move on to, do you not, a different octave, a more amorphous octave. So that when you stand back, you wonder where that came from. Where did that come from? It came from an aspect of your multidimensional self that you can embrace, that has a time and space, that has a frequency that you can use now, that doesn't have to be you separate from the world doing your creativity separate, but you here, bringing that into this dimension with you. What keeps us from exploring ourselves, of course, is what I call the unspeakable. And we all have the unspeakable. The unspeakable is that subconscious memory that comes out in the colors that we use, in the way we hold the form, the way we constrict the form, of that which our present consciousness imprinted with our culture, with our parental environment, with that which we have chosen, to use as the fuel for our growth in this lifetime, is constricting to us. We would not like to palpate that we might be killers, or that we might have some scenario in there of relationship with mothers and lovers and fathers and children that's unspeakable to us. But we do. But we do. And when we allow ourselves the power and the adventure of beginning to explore inside, the unspeakable, always comes up. And so when it does, a tremendous thing happens. And that is that when we see the scenario of some amorphous feeling that we've had about ourselves, of limitation, of guilt, of judgment, and it takes form, and I see, here I am, way back in 200 BC, and I'm doing this thing that my present consciousness would say is unspeakable. But I'm here, and I'm viewing this going on. I'm experiencing this going on. A profound thing happens. Since I recognize it from the consciousness that I had as I was living it, suddenly my judgment disappears, and I understand why I had chosen that. Because I surely had chosen that. And when that happens, the emotional body makes contact with the soul. And when we begin to make contact with our soul energy, we become free. We become free of our limitations. We become free of that fuel that we've utilized for our growth in this lifetime, of our parents, of our lovers, of our constrictions, of our judgments. And we release the crystallization of those images. And the essence comes back around and moves in through the vehicle that we're using now. And our creative pulse, our creative capacity increases profoundly. And not only does the surge of that life force increase profoundly, but our frame of reference extends itself forever. If you want to play beautifully, meditate on playing beautifully. Remember that you can do it. You're the only one in your way for anything that you want to manifest in this lifetime. You're the only one. And so you're the only one that can free you. And we must become free at this time so that we can precipitate in that unmanifest energy. That's where the higher self comes in. I'm speaking of the higher self. Because the higher self is the megaphone of the soul. The higher self is that vibration from unmanifest energy that comes out in a thought form, in a color, in a memory, in a composition that we can contact, that we can precipitate into this dimension. And our higher self is never separate from us. It's simply that our judgment and our self-righteousness and our guilt and our fear looming up from our emotional body block us from being able to palpate that that energy is always there. And that it's all a blueprint of our soul. And that this is all a cosmic joke. It truly is. And that every once in a while, when out of fear we begin to sleep and sleep and sleep, we have a little cosmic loop that goes on there that drops us into some usually terrible, dramatic situation that forces us to wake up and begin to say, wait a minute, who am I in this? And we begin to separate out from the stickum of our emotional body's drama and palpate that energy that's always there with us, that's always attendant to us in this dimension. When we can actively, consciously expand our attention so that we can wrap the mind around that understanding, that frequency that's called the higher self, we're irrevocably changed forever. And that's fun. And that's fun. It's like when you really become involved in your creativity, you become a child. You forget what time it is. You forget what day it is. You forget who's judging and what it is. You simply begin to play. When you're playing like that, your higher self is always there. It's always there with you. activating your capacity to manifest in whatever way you're doing that. So we simply have to allow our consciousness to seek that. We simply have to place our attention on that octave and that dimension of reality to use what's there. Maybe some of you are already playing with the fact that the color spectrum goes on. Goes on and on and on. Way past that limitation that we see here. And we need to pull it in at this time. Because as you find those colors that are outside that, you begin to speak a new language. It's the language of universal life. It's the language of the universal soul. And that's why you're here. Because we have to begin to recognize that we count, that we're here to give a gift to the world. There is nobody that has more power to imprint on this world than a creative person. And in fact, the capacity, the limitation, or the expansion that's available, the medium that's available to the world, to the children of the world, is totally dependent on the consciousness of those who are accessing that creative energy and bringing it forth. And bringing it forth through their own filter. And allowing that filter to be divine, to be perfect, to be exquisite, to be balanced, to speak of higher octaves, to speak of ecstasy and rapture and bliss, and not fear and anxiety. You are shaping the world of my 6 children. You are shaping the world by what you bring forth that everyone embraces. That you are sitting here now, and if you notice that there's no longer those little going on. It's gotten smooth now and very tight. Can you feel that? See if you can feel it. The energy has begun to roll itself very, very tight. That may not seem like anything to you, but when you go tonight to sleep, this energy is going to impinge upon you, and it's going to start pushing on you. It's going to give you dreams, and it's going to begin moving the molecular structure of your body. That moves what comes from you tomorrow, whether that's simply the way you see yourself, or the way you're relating, or what is coming forth from you. So we have to be able to play. We have to be able to play. And so I invite you here in New Mexico to play. To play. You don't have to stay in your head here. In fact, you'll get nothing if you stay within the limitation of your finite mind. But allow your higher mind, the hologram of your being, to come into play here, to come into action, so that as you see the designs, the patternings, the frequencies, the subtleties that are everywhere in New Mexico, you stop, move through the spin point of that pattern or that frequency, and you will find yourselves in a new world, in a different world, which will nourish you. These mountains here are mountains of the heart. And I know that you are only going here and there, and I don't know where the here and the there is. But there's a lot of nourishment for the heart here. And it's the heart that needs to speak on this planet at this time. So let it open, because there's no one here but you, and you can afford each other the space to move into that hologram of who you are, so that you can touch this earth and these people here. Because simply going out to the pueblos in New Mexico will cause you a juxtaposition of reality. the smells that you smell, the things that you see will move your mind a little bit. And if you're conscious, if your intention, if you have an intention about that consciousness, you can use that stimuli to take you through to another dimension that is very real, that will enrich you, that will expand you, that will allow you for at least a short time to forget about whatever it is that your positionality, that you think you are supposed to be or offer to the world, and allow you to expand into unlimitedness. That's why we're here. That's why we're all here this time. Let's interact a little bit so that you can, yeah. You all feel hearts are doing this. Okay. So you come to me, and then we'll get some expansion. So, will someone speak? A question? So, yes.
I wanted to ask you about male-female relationships.
Yeah, I knew she was just
They're so important to me. They seem so important, and yet they're not, in some way. You know, I mean, and how important are they really?
What's important
What's really
is the energy of the male and female. Because we are having an experiment on this planet. An experiment that does not go on in all dimensions on all planets, which is called polarity. And we have separated out some qualities that we call yang, that we call masculine, and some qualities that we call yang, which we call feminine. And we are looking at what happens when they are separate. What happens is we become addicted to each other. That's what happens. And then we start this emotional body game of relationship that we continue and continue and continue, even when we know in some part of our being that this is absurd, that this is not what I'm really hungry for. But instead we project onto each other. And so we are always extending what is our own reality out there, outside ourselves. Male and female energy is profoundly important to us. Profoundly. You must balance that within yourself. But you must find it within yourself. You must explore inside yourself what that energy is and how you can use it and how to balance it together so that you are a whole being. When you are a whole being and you have explored that, our relationships outside ourselves will go through the most intense change. We're in the midst of that right now. It's not working, is it? Relationships are not working very well right now because there is an upheaval going on. All of the old, now you will do it this way and I'll do it that way, is not working. Because I want to do it the way you're doing it, you know? And the child in us begins to explore and wants to take on more, and wants to get bigger. And so we have to take over that which was before the domain of our opposite. Of our opposite. And when we do that, then that hunger, that need level, which is the emotional body level, will be released, and we'll learn how to love, because we haven't learned how to love. We have not learned how to merge. And the great, speaking of our lessons, The great challenge at this time is to merge all polarity back into one. Yeah. And it's going to be very exciting as we do that. And we have no other choice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to happen in our lifetime?
Yes, that is already happening.
But wouldn't it change the structures enough? World
The structures are already falling down. What we're experiencing now is the falling down. And we're not yet palpating. We give lip service sometimes to a feeling or an idea about what could come, what should it be, what might it be. But we haven't attained that yet, but we will. Because as each one begins to seek the hologram of their own being, then that need level begins to drop away. And so that we see in a very different way each other. And as we go inside and begin to explore who we are, then we understand what we've been doing with those relationships, because we have chosen relationships through karma, through the stickum of the emotional body, through the astral energy. We have not chosen relationships out of this ethereal light. We have not. We've chosen them with great compassion and permission. One of the most profound things that I have learned in working with people is that that person who most denies you, who most abuses you, who so often physically has abused someone, when they explore who is that person that's damaged them so much that they've given permission to damage themselves with, turns out to be someone with whom they have traveled for eons of time. Because, and this is very profound, no one else will do it for you. Your enemy will not waste their Akashic record. Do you see what I'm saying? Their growth of their soul on you. They're not going to dirty their little record on you.
That's right.
If you say, oh, I've got to be abused, you're going to have trouble finding someone who's going to abuse you. And this has just been amazing for me to discover. It's only a soul who profoundly loves you that says, do you really want to play that out? Do you want to get chopped and burned and raped? And do you really think you must do that? Well, if that's the only way you can grow, then I will give that to you. And then the terrible thing that happens is that then you decide that you better give it back to them, and around and around and around you go. But it's very profound to recognize that. We cannot palpate truly within ourselves that we are not victims. Because our judgment and our guilt and our self-righteousness has limited us to such a degree that we have no connection to our unlimitedness. We have forgotten how powerful we are. And even yet, if we had any idea how powerful we are, it would put us into a state of catastrophe. If you notice, when you're on, things become synchronous for you. You think something, and it comes true. You think about someone, they call you on the phone. You think, I wish I knew. Whop, the book opens up and you find it. Those aren't accidents. That's the higher self playing with you. Saying, come on. You know that. So you wouldn't ask about channeling, but that you know how to channel. So all you have to do is give permission. The whole thing is wrapped up in our intentionality. It's simply that to understand intentionality, we have to get into the hologram. We have to get all the way around the circle. And we're real afraid to go around the circle. We're real afraid to see what's on the other side over there. So we fall into patterns of illusion. And until we can get rid of the illusion, we can't have a relationship with each other. If I'm still playing some role for you, then you have no idea who I am, and we're still playing an illusion. So you can't find you. We're caught in the same bind, you know what I mean? So it's until we take off, do we divest ourselves of all of those roles, of all of those, you do this and I'll do that, that we can come into relationship with each other in a way that's true merging. You can't merge while you're resisting. And you're not going to stop resisting while you are trying to protect yourself. And we have learned to protect ourselves, and that has become the major focus of our lives.
please, on channeling?
Yes, that's all I've been saying so far. Yes. And what I would say about channeling is that when you, again, allow the higher mind to wrap itself around with intentionality, it will bring forth, it creates a perfect channel. And it will bring forth your higher self that's waiting to be asked, always waiting to be asked. You will never ask your higher self and get nothing. It's impossible. So to channel, I then would say, channel your higher self because it has the repertoire of all your Akashic records, all the dimensions your soul has ever touched. So it's limitless. It's limitless. And it will always guide you into the idea, into the thought form, into the vision, into the creative moment that will push you on the path that you need to be pushed. At the same time, I would say that there are endless entities in every dimension, who can be accessed, who can be used to advance your capacity. You know, if you want to paint something and you want to understand something about color, focus your intention on that lesson. Give me color. Don't be too particular or you'll get a limited, very limited idea since your consciousness is too limited. Simply focus your attention. Give me color. And you can access easily any consciousness. Let's use consciousness and not entities when we talk about channeling. That can come through you and give you those lessons. However, to get that lesson, you have to be free. You have to let go of yourself a little bit. So if you're wanting to channel something, the first thing I would say to you is spin around. Shake loose your physical vehicle. Open your emotional body so that you can channel through a frequency which can teach you. You don't want to become the entity. I would like to point out to you that all this breathlessness about entities is that these are beings who are simply sitting in the astral dimension. They're simply sitting on the other side of the veil, looking down at us. So the perspective is a little bit broader on some octaves, but they are limited by their own positionality, what they experienced in body. So when you ask, teach me this, or how should I, or what's the truth over here, you're going to get their truth as they perceive it. Which is why it's very flashy to perceive an entity, because it gesticulates and it has positionality and it has personality and you know it's there. But then you're stuck with all its stuff, you know. And sometimes it's just better to channel, to become that void which allows the energy to move through of our own knowing. We have become so entrapped in body that we don't recognize ourselves outside of the mirror. So we're always going, am I like you? Or am I not like you? You know, and we lose ourselves. We lose the power that was given to us to come into this dimension, to give forth a gift, our gift. So channeling needs to be with that intention, with that consciousness, that you are simply a void that gives a message, that gives a dictate. It's this I'm interested in. Not all the other things you experienced out there in your positionality about the other thing, but this. And that then is what comes to you. So you have to be able to free yourself from the anxiety of where you begin and someone else ends, or they begin and you end, because we're all one big swirling mass down here, which is what's so humorous about all of our separating stances in the first place. The very first time that I ever meditated in a group, I didn't know anything about light, and I certainly didn't know anything about this stuff. And a huge, this big, bolt of light blasted me through the middle of my head, and there was nothing left. It was my whole brain was just, there was just sort of a shell surrounding this hole of light that went right through the other side. And I heard a message. And the message was, where there is no resistance, there's no harm. And that's what we have to come to know about ourselves if we're ever going to channel. You're unbreakable. You're unending. You never die. You just change form. So be the child and play with the form. This is what's so wonderful about exposing yourself to different dimensions. Because all dimensions have their own realities, their own shapes and form. Cosmic geometry. Everything is woven in the lattice work of meshwork of reality. And it's different in different dimensions. And we can access it and we can use it. And whenever you pull through that sacred geometry, those sacred colors, you're gifting that memory to all those other beings who have chosen, through the wisdom of their souls, to be born into these bodies, into these families, into this time, purposefully, purposefully, purposefully.
So actually the channeling which you are talking, it's not channeling of entities, it's channeling really of your higher self.
That's right. That's the highest octave. You can channel entities. Entities are everywhere, in every dimension. We are sitting here in simultaneous space with the astral dimension. You can tell the astral dimension because it has a lot of stickum. It has emotion. It's full of entities. It's full of little fairies, and it's full of rock spirits. And you're going to come across those energies, if you wish, in New Mexico, as in no place else. Of course, every place on the earth has its power spots. Every place has places where that energy is nourished and therefore survives and leaps through the veils so that you can palpate them. It's very strong here in New Mexico. That's why I lament that you did not come to Galisteo. Sometime do come to Galisteo, because you can feel it so consciously there. You can choose to use the wisdom or the positionality of that entity, or of those consciousnesses that are in all those dimensions. But we needn't be reckless about it. And we need to be discerning about it. That's why I'm saying, if you are to channel through, get out of the way so it doesn't stick to you. You might want a piece of information from a great poet, or a great musician, or a great artist of the past. This is a wonderful way to get into contact, to up your skills. Just talking about skill level, to up your skills, get into contact with one of those entities. They're available. They're available. But how they got there, and usually the retching, if you read their history, of their souls, of their emotions, to get into that place where there was nothing else they could do. They couldn't communicate with mankind, so they, Well, do you want that? You don't need that. But you could take the wisdom that they learned. If you're able to contact them, it means that they're still available. They're still within dimensions close enough to our dimension. They still have enough personality form to make contact, which means they still have enough pollution to communicate with us. So you need to be discerning and not breathless about an entity that comes through. And you want to know that that entity is an entity of light. Mm-hmm. So that by some positionality, by some unconscious guilt that you have, you don't attract to you some particle consciousness that really is not going to be very useful to you. And if you suddenly find yourself painting strange oblique colors, you've picked up something there. So you have to learn how to be discerning if you're going to play with channeling. But there's nothing breathless about channeling. There is no one who cannot channel. But let us become conscious as to the choices and to what we're doing. I see that there are several channels in this group already. So forgive me. But each one of us has that capacity by the very fact that we're multidimensional beings.
Were you resistant or fearful maybe when you first realized?
Well, I was so astounded, and so there was nothing left of me. I mean, it moved me right out of the way. And with that message that still echoes in my mind, I am still understanding what that means. Where there's no resistance, there's no harm. And how that allows me to expand. And what I can say to you about that place of no resistance and no harm is the childlike energy of the pure creative force. That's the place. So you have to come into that place. That's why I love to say to people, you want to channel, you want to bring forth before you're going to create something, a higher octave, spin around till you get real dizzy. Because by the time you've spun around, you will not be able to hold your positionality. You will not be able to carry on with your posturing and your frozen face and your constricted solar plexus. You will not, And so what will happen is there will be an expansion that takes place for you. It's a wonderful, wonderful exercise, and it does something very practical, very scientific. It balances, it activates the bridge between the left and right hemispheres of our brain. So what happens when you become very, very creative, when you move to a genius level, is that the lobes of your brain begin to pulsate in synchronicity. You see, as we are normally, it's boom, 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 boom. The left, the right, the left, the right. But when you move into a genius octave, your brain begins to do this. That's where you want to be whenever you are consciously choosing to be the vehicle of manifestation for anything. For anything.
I would like to ask a little bit, now emotional body, as you are calling it, is it something like related to negative ego?
Unfortunately, we have only used it that way. In the history of this planet, our frame of reference for the emotional body is such. We seem to teach ourselves through negativity. So our experiences in coming into form and coming into body have been so impregnated with our judgment, with our separation from our divine selves, that the repertoire of our emotional body is indeed quite negative. It's full of fear. It's full of anxiety. And because it's outside of time and space, it doesn't recognize that we have the opportunity to go on. So it continues to repeat itself, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. It gets the same themes going. We make the same choices that we did with the same people, And it loves it. And every time, if you have a repertoire of fear, for example, or separation, that is stimulated, the emotional body is fed, and it creates a change in your blood chemistry in the brain that radiates out through your auric field. That message, that imprint that says, hit me, or whatever you're into. Deny me, refuse me, hate me, whatever it is that it's accustomed to. Whatever its thing is that says, I can only be, or I only get this. And then it continues, that repetition. The only way that we can change this emotional body is to precipitate in the spirit, the divine, the hologram of our multidimensional self. When we begin to access that energy, the emotional body quickens, begins to speed up, and so it spins off those emotions, and it begins to look for that new nutrient, that new energy that comes to it. And that's where we want to be right now. We need to seed this earth with rapture, with ecstasy. And that's why I'm saying that you're so important. Because creative energy does that. Sexual energy does that as well. Because they're the same. The same because they're bringing the unmanifest in. pain and suffering. We're very addicted to pain and suffering, aren't we? We truly are. And then I get into a lovely little conversation with you, which has to do with the fact that there are no victims. On a soul level, there are no victims. You cannot perpetrate something on someone else without their permission. Now, one of the places our emotional body has gotten stuck is that when we choose a blueprint, because we choose a blueprint in each lifetime, I will go down and I will learn these lessons. And perhaps the lesson that you're going to perpetrate at this time is to hurt someone else or take their life force. Your soul and their soul know this is a little game that you're playing here, and you come down and you perpetrate that. But the experience of it in body, the physicality of it is so profound that it imprints itself. And you carry that imprint with you in the molecular structure of your body over and over and over and over again. So we become very addicted to pain and suffering.
I think we manufacture it, don't we?
We do.
With each other.
From our
and
limitedness. Because where is our repertoire of merging? I say to you guys, we're all the same. And half of you went, ugh. You know? We're very addicted to our separation. And I'm not like you, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what can we manifest then but pain? We have profound pain. What we don't understand is that that pain is not involved in being denied by a lover or not being recognized as a great artist. The pain is that we can't contact our own selves, that we're separate from our own divine energy. We can't access it. We've forgotten. And that's pain.
We could grow through the ecstasy and through the
yes.
joy, right?
Yes, we could. We could. Every time you, and this is why I say, yes, contact your higher selves. Move your consciousness into an octave where you are seeking that, where you are reaching to palpate that. Because every time you have an experience of connection with those higher octaves, you imprint the emotional body and it spins faster. And when you have that, everyone that's connected to you has that. One of the wonderful things that happens in our work is that we go in and we look at our repertoire, you know, and we see our scenarios and the plays that we've created, and we see who we've created them with, who we're still dragging around with us now. And as soon as we say, and have you ever known that person in this lifetime? Oh yes, it's my mother or my lover or my whoever. What happens is the mother or the lover gets a little pull on that internal lattice work, on that soul level. And she becomes released from playing that role in your movie. Because she's just a pawn in your movie. You have that person set up to do that with you, for you, by you, of you. You know, they're the pawn in your movie. When you move, they have to change. They have to change. This is what happens in relationships as well. Somebody begins to grow and the other one goes, don't change. Don't do that. It frightens me. It scares me. We had a contract. We were going to come down here and you were going to kick me around. Stop being loving. I don't like it. You know? We do this all the time. We do this all the time. So when you begin to quicken your frequency, all the people in your personal little karmic pool start going through changes. So they don't have to do it the same way with you anymore. They become freed. And that's when it becomes very fun. Very fun here. We need to learn how to play here. And we begin to play when we don't take it so seriously. When we begin to palpate that we are multidimensional beings. And that word means something. Something that's real. That we can access as reality. That we can use. That we can use. So let us be about the ecstasy. When we tap into ecstasy, we will not become diseased. Whole in the spirit, whole in the body. We will not become diseased. We will not age. We will not die. Technologically, we already have the answers for those things. But it's our addiction on the emotional body level that keeps us going through this little dance of birth, struggle, death. It's just an illusion. It's just an illusion. You can change the molecular structure of your body. You do every 7 years. That's a fact. The cells in your body change every 7 years. So why put on this intense heaviness of dis-ease, of discommunication, of scattered energy that produces death? There's no need for it at all. It's very interesting. I've worked with so many people. I've worked with child abuse cases. I've worked with rape cases. I've worked with people starving. I've worked with all kinds of the human condition. And whenever you choose to go inside and find out, okay, let's have the source of it. Glory be, there you are in the center of the movie, dictating it all. Absolutely dictating it all. There's nothing strange to you out there. We're not afraid of the unknown. We're only afraid of what we have to whisper of. What we have a whisper of.
Whisper?
A whisper of. Some feeling, some memory out within ourselves. That's what triggers that. That's how we know each other. When you meet someone, you like them right away, or you pull back right away. Why? Because the memory within your physical vehicle remembers that person, remembers that energy, has a frame of reference for it. Says, this is dangerous. And you're right. You're always right. Of course, it's always dangerous only from the level of the ego, only from the level of There's nothing going on outside us that's not a part of us. We've got to get that. We have to get that people are starving in Africa for you guys to get it. You know, we're hungry. We're hungry. We can feed our mouths. We're hungry inside. We're drying up. We're drying up. We have to awaken. When we understand that, we'll take care of all that over there. There's no reason for anyone to starve. Of course. And I know that intimately because I spent a long time in the Peace Corps, and I used to deal with dying babies all the time. And in some of the countries that I lived, 50% of the babies died. And so I would be, this wonderful little baby, and next week, that baby's gone, right here in my own arms. And I really had a chance to observe from the center position, where is the justice, and what is really happening there? And I tell you that we must learn to see each other's actions through the Akashic record, through understanding the choice of the soul. Not judging someone by what you see happening, but by searching inside for the reason for that. The soul has made a choice to do that. We have to learn to honor that choice. Have to learn to honor
hard
that
concept.
It's a terribly hard concept.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll begin to understand that we're participatory. Because only when we understand that we're participatory can we change that. Otherwise we're going to continue it, And if you haven't had your number come up, you will. So it's a good idea to change it.
And also, like you're saying, things are speeding up and things are changing.
Yes.
Does that mean there will be no more karmic experiences in the future?
The beings coming in now are coming in with so much less karma and so much more clarity and understanding of who they are. There is that cycle, yes. There is that cycle of action and reaction that we have created here. But we, right now, have a chance to alter that in a way that has never been available within the consciousness of this planet. Because the moment you recognize who you are, you just left the karmic circle. Do you see? When you know who you are, then you know what those lessons are, what those choices are. And so you can create beautifully with them. Create beautifully. A lot of enlightened people are leaving the planet in order to help out in the next octaves up, in the next dimensions up, because there is so much leaving of the planet that's going on right now. There's a profound change going on in terms of understanding karma. There are no lords of karma out there going for you. It's you holding on to your own memory, your own judgment that's taking place. And we have, for the very first time, the capacity to expand our consciousness to release it. But we have to explore what our repertoire truly is so that we understand, so that we have compassion, so that we begin to manifest. We need to play at manifestation now. We can't do that while we're still holding our positionality, while we're still pretending that what we really want is a relationship. What we really want in relationships usually is for someone to do it for us. For someone to be that part of ourselves that we can't come into contact with. So when we start looking for that energy inside ourselves, we move off the karmic cycle, you see. Because we don't have the need. So when we don't have the need, we become much more discerning. We choose better. We don't have to choose this being born and struggle and die. We don't. We simply have to awaken. Have to awaken. And it's available for us now to awaken as it's never been before.
Why is that?
Because our souls have come to a place where it's necessary.
There is no choice.
There is no wasted energy in the universe. And we've come to a place now where there's a great opportunity for that expansion. And just like the creative energy builds and builds and builds and pop, until it fissions out. That's where we are right now. That's where we are. That's what I meant by the cosmic boot. We are being pushed now. We are seriously being pushed to awaken.
What about those people who can't break through that protective shield, that can't break through the resistance?
Can't?
Or won't.
Let's say held by churches or by something like
that their belief system is so strong that they can't.
Their belief system is only a part of the choice that they made to push themselves through someplace. People who are not awakening will be leaving this planet, are leaving this planet. This is a time we have all very seriously chosen to come here now. And we have to get light with it. You know, we really have to get light. It's like I had to go and hold a bunch of dying babies in my arms to get light. And I say that to you from my heart. I had to burn it out, scream it out, retch it out, until finally I could honor death. And it was the greatest teaching I was ever given. Greatest teaching. When we can move through the funnel of death, then we understand life. And we learn how to be light.
What did you learn about that?
That it's a passageway, that we survive it, that it has meaning, that it's a part of our experience, it's part of our greatest experience in this dimension. And that the being that we are is always there, always there. Native cultures understand that. You know, that's why they have so many rituals. That's why they have so much that goes on that plays itself out about death. Now we cover it up in hospitals and turn away, you know. But in other cultures, there's a great to-do about that passage. There's a great to-do. And intrinsic in that is an understanding that this body is not all we are. This body is not all we are. It's really wonderful to watch people unfold their own Akashic records, their own experiences of their multidimensional lifetimes, you know, because when they then look at their body, because we have so much stuff about our bodies, don't we? When they then look at their bodies, they can see these people that they've been, these experiences that they've had, popping out everywhere. The shape of your body is telling the whole of your experiences, of your choices. Death is just a transition. Consciousness survives death Always.
About the various forms of death, the different ways of dying.
Yes, that's a wonderful one. That's a really wonderful one. That's some of our best creativity is how we do it. I mean that seriously, how we do it. Yeah. And I love to do that when we work in terms of past life things, because by the time someone's gone through 10 deaths of themselves, they really change their feeling, their experience of what that is. But what's really fascinating is that, yes, our death is not an accident. We choose it, and we designed the whole of it. It's a great act that we perform, you know. And it's very wonderful because often people will come with chronic illnesses or chronic perceptions, positionalities about themselves. And lo and behold, the first 5 deaths they go through all have to do with, I was stabbed in the heart, and I was in the heart, and I died of it, you know. And they will go through that which is locked in the cells of their body. And it frees them from that. Again, our death simply has to do with how we feel about ourselves. It is wonderful when people start viewing deaths, experiencing deaths in a peaceful manner, on an octave of choice. Well, I lay down one day and I knew that I had completed it, and I passed on peacefully in my sleep. When they imprint that in the molecular structure of the body they're carrying now, they are irrevocably changed forever. And I'd love to do data on that, except I think data is a game. Because I'll bet you that they'll choose to die that way this time. The form of our death expresses how we feel about ourselves. If we cannot communicate, you'll have a lot of deaths getting strangled and hung and choked or drowned right here in the chakra of communication. And what's so wonderful about that is that as the body begins to be able to tell you how it feels about it, you release it. As a group, we're all working in this chakra. We're all working in the throat chakra. We're all working in that chakra of communication, of being able to merge through the higher energy with the lower octaves. So there's a lot of strangling and stuff that goes on. And once you have seen it and your body releases the memory of it, something changes. People are always clearing their throat or smoking, stop clearing their throat. Because they're freed of what was binding them. They finally were able to draw within their consciousness a hologram of what this meant. So they don't need it anymore. Do you know what I mean? That's what I mean about getting light. Getting light. Finding out where our stuff is. Just letting go.
If we're never victims, but yet the consciousness of the whole, like you're talking about the Jews, for example, in Africa, our consciousness affects that. I know it does. And yet, you could say they're never victims of themselves, but yet we are, whoever, if other people are contributing, other consciousnesses are contributing.
They're giving us a great gift, asking us to awaken, and they have to do that.
Yeah.
So the degree to which they suffer, if you're going to get entrapped in physical form, is the degree to which we sleep through. We're not separate. That's the point I was making. We're not separate. Their dying of starvation is no different than our keeping to it. Right. We are starving as well. Last year I took a Hopi woman to Africa to call the rain, an 82-year-old woman who did this ritual, which has been done for 4,000 years. The first woman to ever do it, I'd like to point out, who went to Africa to call the rain to demonstrate to them, to demonstrate manifestation. There's no need for drought. It just hasn't occurred to your consciousness to call the rain, has it? When we get hungry over here, we're going to start calling the rain and getting rid of the locust and all that stuff because we're still in a place of separation. What does it take? What does it take for us to understand that? How much death do we have to go through before we get it? But the point is that here is this woman, who goes there to give that simple message that the whole world and all its technology and all of its brilliant mind has not yet been able to embrace, which is that there is unlimited resource in the universe. We needn't starve. We needn't have any of these traumas that we're addicted to. All we have to do is be able to say, I can call the rain. I'm willing to participate. I am participating.
Yeah.
It's when you know inside yourself that you are participating in whatever, quote, victimization is going on. Not the self-righteousness. You see, for 2,000 years, we have become very addicted in this Judeo-Christic era, in the last 2,000 years, to martyrism, you know, and self-righteousness. We're very, very addicted to that. We have to break that now. We have to understand that we are participating. We are choosing. And that each one of us can do that within ourselves. You know, it's not, I would if I could, but I can't. I'm not a large enough being. One 82-year-old woman brought the rain that they had not had for 7 years there.
Did she?
You bet she did. In exactly the direction that she sent it. Exactly the line all across Africa that she sent it. And they had the best rain they'd had in 7 years. Unfortunately, they'd eaten most of their seeds. You know? And so now, this year, they have lotus. And the lotus are eating everything. What's it saying? It's saying we haven't got it yet, you know?
Yeah.
When I went out to the Bahamas, I came home and we were having a lotus infestation, and I realized it seemed very strange at home. I'd been gone for 3 weeks or something, and it was very quiet. And there are usually so many birds under the eaves that my sessions, I always have to say, well, you're going to hear the birds while you're working on yourself. And so we sat down as a group and we said, there are no birds. The birds left. I don't know why, but there are no birds here. So we sat down as a group and we called the birds. Next day, the birds are all back. You know?
Yeah.
The only thing is that concept, that illusion of limitation. That's all. I used to work with a school of children, and all the little children could douse. All the little children could call the rain. There wasn't anything special about them.
Yeah.
I wasn't teaching them magic arts. I wasn't teaching them hocus and pocus. I was just saying, put your intentionality over here, and we can create whatever we need to. We need to begin with ourselves. We need to begin with ourselves.
Sort of the ultimate in creativity, really.
Absolutely. And the most majestic. It's just that we're still so coy because we're so impregnated with that martyrism, self-righteousness thought form that we don't dare stand out and radiate and say, I am that I am. No better, no worse. And I find it good.